Lauderdale, he picked a spot where there's really nothing much to see other than rolling hills planted with winter wheat. Nothing but those hills and that sky. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, usually on the last day of December, that sky is gray and threatening and low. On the last afternoon of 1995, the sun was shining, and that sky was an almost impossible deep blue, an infinite blue. What was Jay thinking when he got out of his car, carefully locked it, put the key in his pocket, and sat down cross-legged on the pavement? I know what he was thinking 10 days earlier when he visited the English department office on the last day of school before the holiday break to ask me about some letters of recommendation he wanted me to write. We talked about his eagerness to get on with his life after high school. We talked about different colleges. We talked about his plan to major in art. Most people were telling him they didn't think that was a good idea. You see, Jay was an exceptional student. His 3.98 grade point average ranked him number 2 in his class of over 400. He was a good enough athlete that he had qualified for the state track tournament 2 years previous, for the previous 2 years. He was a fine bass guitar player who local bands would hire to fill in whenever their regular bass players were in detox or jail. With all of that talent and ability, why art? He asked me what I thought. I told him I thought he should do what he loved. He was young, and there would be plenty of time to make a different plan if art didn't work out for him the way he hoped it would. When he left the office, Jay was happy. And why not? He was an 18-year-old kid standing on the edge of infinite possibilities. He said, "I'll see you right after the break." He said, "Have a great Christmas." He said, "Happy holidays," and handed me a little bundle wrapped in newsprint. It was a terracotta bust he had made in an art class, a caricature of me. I've looked at that bust every day for the last 18 years when I sit down at my desk. And when I do, I think about our last conversation. And I wonder, did Jay say something a little bit odd and I didn't catch it? Was he actually saying goodbye to me, but I didn't understand him? Most haunting of all, was he actually asking me for help, but I didn't realize it? And I wondered, when he sat down cross-legged on the Badger Mountain Road 10 days later, was he thinking about infinite possibilities? Or did he see an abyss, a chasm so deep, so dark, and so threatening in front of him that he had to close his eyes, to close them to the blackness under that infinite blue sky? The sky was not infinite a week later, not at all. When the high school principal, Mike, and I left the funeral home, we stepped out into bleak grayness, swirling snowflakes, and what seemed like hundreds of sobbing kids. After a couple of minutes, Mike looked at me and said, "I just can't take this anymore." I couldn't either, and we almost literally ran away back to the school. A school filled with 1,200 other kids who are a complete mystery to me. How did those kids come to have something that Jay did not? The courage and the strength to look squarely at their infinite possibilities and move toward them with confidence. Or perhaps just with curiosity, or maybe just with hope. And how do we recognize the kids like Jay who lack those things? I certainly wasn't prepared. I didn't know that every year in the U.S., 1 out of every 5 teenagers seriously consider suicide. I didn't know that every year in the U.S., 1 million teenagers actually attempt suicide, and 300,000 of them require medical care as a result. And I didn't know that every year in the U.S., 1,700 teenagers actually die in suicides, almost 3 per day. We need to nurture and watch our teenagers just as carefully as we nurture and watch our young children. It's so easy to look at a moody teenage boy and say, oh, he's just going through a phase. It's so easy to look at a weeping teenage girl and say, she's just being dramatic. And it's so easy to look at a kid like Jay and say, wow, that kid is a star. He's going to go far. But what if we're wrong? What then? What if one of those kids does what Jay did? What if that kid drives up to Badger Mountain Road in the lonely wheat fields? What if that kid sits down cross-legged on the pavement? What if that kid is holding a .40 caliber Beretta pistol while he looks up and sees something under that infinite blue sky, that beautiful and horrible sky? Mr. Toastmaster.